Welcome to What's Up Today. I'm your host, Dr. Ryan Stouffer. Today we're discussing the matter of satire and how satire news programs cover the issue of gun control. Let's hear from Sierra about how her satire news program compared to the Fox News clip she watched. Sierra?
Yeah, so I watched Fox News with Tucker Carlson as well as Stephen Colbert, his Late Night with Stephen Colbert show. So with Tucker Carlson, he's more concerned about the gun control bill and how he says it's not gun control, it's people control. But Stephen Colbert, he thinks of the issue completely different. He brings up how Trump wants the teachers to, have guns in the classroom, and he doesn't agree with it because he gives one reason saying that it's not in the school budget, which, makes sense. But he goes on to talk about it in a very dark humor type of way.
Just arm the teachers. I'm sure it's in the school budget. Sorry your school can't afford enough copies of To Kill a Mockingbird, but good news, we're giving you something that can kill any bird. 2, sorry kids, we had to cut the music program, but you can still watch Mr. Hutchinson polish his Glock in the darkened band room. And, he can play that thing. He can play that thing. Yeah.
Very dark, but it's very satirical at the same time. But he brings up realistic problems in the real world, but he talks about them unrealistically. So that's my point.
All right, thanks, Sierra. Christine, you watched The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. How did Trevor compare with this issue?
When comparing to Fox News, Trevor kind of took a different approach. He really played up on the victims and what they're doing, and Fox News was a lot more about the shooter. And, when he was talking about the kids, he kind of called out lawmakers as they are, what are you doing? What are you doing actually about gun control? And he really, kind of recited with them and was like, I'm with them. And he really just wanted lawmakers to hear him and his voice on it.
So we have 2 liberal commentators. We have another liberal satirical show. That's Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. Joe, what did you see when you watched John Oliver?
Yeah, so when I watched John Oliver, I saw a more of attention on the after effects and the repercussions from the incident, specifically looking into the NRA and what they've done in the past that really could have prevented or, caused this event to happen, which is the complete opposite with Fox News. With Fox News, they were just trying to stay away from the NRA. They were trying to, not even mention them and mention, the things that they've done for gun advocacy, which I thought was just, really interesting. And when y'all were talking about how yours are focusing either more on, the gun law or the students, it's really it was more focused on the people that are playing a part in all this type of, all these incidences that are happening.
Interesting. And Seth, you watched a little bit different of a satirical news program because you watched The Opposition with Jordan Klepper, which masquerades itself as a conservative news program, but it's obviously liberal if you look between the lines. So what were your kind of takeaways from watching that show?
Well, yeah, like you said, I mean, he kind of acts kind of like how Tucker Carlson does in Fox News. And he reports the news in the same way, but all of his language is so more drastic that you can tell that he's more mocking the conservatives' views. For example, he has a field reporter, Laura Gray, and she went down to Florida where the school shooting was recently and was interviewing students. And a lot of some of the Fox News reporters, they were commenting about the issue and were saying, the students shouldn't be, speaking up, talking about these gun laws, acting like they know everything because, they're not professionals on gun laws. Well, Laura Gray went out in the field and was saying the same thing, was interviewing all these students like, hey, you don't know anything, you're just a kid, what do you know? But in the end, she was really interviewing these children saying, like what Sierra said, Tucker Carlson said, they commented on it, saying it's not gun control, it's people control. Well, she interviewed a real student that said, if the issue is people control, then how are they able to use a firearm to kill 30 people in less than an instant? So I thought that was really interesting how they turned these satirical points into real life, issues that are happening.
And I think that's a great insight from all of you because we see that in a lot of satirical programming. So thank you for those insights about the issue of gun control within satirical news programming. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this quick break. Welcome back. Next, we're going to go into a little bit more detail with Seth on his thoughts of his Fox News clip versus Jordan Klepper's The Opposition. Seth?
Thanks, Justin. So, yeah, like we talked about earlier, I was analyzing the opposition by Jordan Kepler.
Have to have a conversation about how to stop gun violence in America, and we need to have that conversation right now.
Now is not a great time for me. I'm in the middle of doing a TV show. Maybe we could table this for ever. But they won't let us. Everyone from the left is already coming out, opinions blazing, taking a ferocious stand on gun control. And if you're like me, a lover of the Second Amendment, you know that the period directly following a mass shooting is the most dangerous time for our guns.
Klepper is kind of like more of like the conservative satire. So, but also like we said, between the lines, it's more of kind of making fun of the conservative side. So I thought it was really interesting because he played clips where it seemed like people were generally more concerned about, losing their gun rights and all these kids that were killed in the shooting. So again, it's attention grabbing in a way that it's like it almost makes you look at Fox News. It's like, wow, that kind of seems a little ridiculous, like the way that they're talking that way. But it reels you back in too, to like real world things that are happening. So.
Well, I think that's one interesting, and Christine, I'd like to get your comment on this, is how is Fox News treating the Parkland shooting survivors? I mean, a lot of times they've been delegitimized in the media because they're only 17, they're only 18. What do they know? What did you see on kind of that issue when you were watching Fox News and The Daily Show, too?
Sure. So Fox News really played up, not so much the emotion part of it, but more so the factual and what happened. And I kind of noticed a lot on the actual shooter rather than the victims, where Trevor Noah completely flipped it and was like, this is about the victims. We need to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and we need to focus on that instead. And Fox News just completely plowed over that.
And I think that's interesting is Fox News, from that conservative point of view, is concerned with the Second Amendment, and that's the easiest way to make the school shooting victims in Parkland to delegitimize them, right? It's the easiest way to build up that argument for why we need to protect that Second Amendment. Sierra, did you see anything about the way the victims were treated in your programming?
Yeah, with Stephen Colbert, he brought up how the victims were reaching out to the people saying that we need to get gun control, under control. And so Stephen Colbert made a statement saying that if you're, over the age of 18, you're not allowed to vote, that people under 18 should vote when it comes to guns, which, again, I think isn't the smartest thing to do because, they are under 18, but they are the victims. So they do know what it's like to be in a school where they, have no control over anything.
Well, and they're going to be over 18 pretty soon, and they are going to have voting rights pretty soon, and they are going to become the majority generation here in the next 20 years. So, Joe, how did Last Week Tonight treat the victims in your viewing?
Well, John Oliver definitely touched on the victims and the things they're going through, but I feel like it was more about the repercussions of the following events, especially in the political world. Specifically, in Fox News, they talk a lot about the NRA, and they talk about law-abiding citizens, but they fail to reach that audience, the kid audience, that the ones that are being truly affected by this issue. So I found that interesting. It was more focused on the repercussions and the political side of it versus the real life struggle that these kids are going through.
And you look at both these programs, I think some consistency we could draw between both Fox News and satirical comedy is they're meant to persuade their audience. They both have a point of view, and they're both trying to communicate that to their audience. So the only way to advocate, I think, in this situation, more gun control is to delegitimize the victims. Because the Parkland students are really advocating for what most people would consider common sense, right? We're going to raise that age to 21. We're going to ban the AR-15 and do some of these things here. So the only way to counteract that argument is to kind of go after them personally here. So let's continue this conversation after the break. Welcome back. Now we're going to hear from Christine and Joe about their opinions on this situation. Christine?
So with Trevor Noah, he really adds a lot of comedy in between, the facts and everything like that. And he actually, one of his most memorable was when he kind of poked fun at President Donald Trump. And
now, President Trump didn't come to the town hall in Florida, but he did host his own listening session in the Mar-a-Lago of the North, the White House. And for once, the president came fully prepared, even bringing a note to tell him what emotions to feel. See there, number 5, I hear you. And you know what? I feel bad for Donald Trump. Because we would have never seen that note if he just had bigger hands. We wouldn't have seen those words.
When, most people would just naturally say that. And by, you know, adding little bits of comedy, it kind of tells more of a story and it makes it more memorable with the audience, and it really resonates more because, you know, people do like stories. They do really resonate with stories.
Great, that's a good point. Sierra, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, with Stephen Colbert, he poked fun at the same thing as well, saying that President Donald Trump had a cheat sheet, and he pointed out the "I hear you," and he was like, hold on, let me bring out mine. So he brings out his, like, out of his pocket, and he tried to act like Donald Trump and saying, you know, that whenever he's breaking up with his wives, he has the "I hear you" on there, and he's just like mimicking his voice, and he's like, oh yeah, I hear you. Like, it was just really memorable.
Joe, what about John Oliver? How did he kind of approach this?
Well, you know, I thought it was interesting. He likes to show the kind of behind-the-scenes stuff that Fox News likes to cut in order to frame their message. For instance, at one point, Trump gathers the Parkland shooters together, and he's, you know, holding like a little meeting with them, asking them, and then he drops the ball that he's going to arm the teachers.
And not surprisingly, arming some teachers did not go down too well in that room. Watch what happened when he asked for a show of hands.
Does anybody like that idea here? Does anybody like it? Right? Yes? For Meadow, your beautiful Meadow. You talked about that. And do people feel strongly against it? Anybody? Anybody? Strongly against it? All right, I mean, look, we can understand both sides.
That is Donald Trump in a nutshell, proposing a terrible idea in a tone-deaf way, then refusing to acknowledge he just lost the popular vote.
But the same clip was shown on Fox News where it left out the hand raising. It left out the opinions of that group that he was talking to. It just kind of framed Trump in this, like, you know, in this like heroic way. He's going to save us from all this stuff. So I thought that was really interesting. And when you take like a step back and you look at both the programs, it's really just all about emotion, kind of like what we, you know, brought up before. In like the satirical, you know, they look at the hypocrisy. They kind of use the comedy to make you go, duh, that's not what it should be. And like the sarcasm's a really powerful way. But when you look at Fox News, they're trying to make their audience angry. They're trying to show them, you know, this side doesn't hear you, so you need to stand up and, you know, fight for your rights. Like, it was just a very emotional tactic, and I thought it was good on both sides. I mean, they both got their message across to their certain audiences. Personally, I like the satire. I think that's a very effective way, but overall, they definitely did their job in you know, showing their agenda.
And you bring up a couple of good points. The first one is media framing, right? Is every program is going to frame their message towards their audience? And obviously, Fox News is trying to make President Trump, you know, heroic, a leader, things like that. Where John Oliver, we clearly know his opinion, if you've been watching the program for the last couple of years, that he's very vehemently anti-Trump. So he's going to, of course, frame that message for his audience as well, too. I think the second interesting thing you bring up is emotion. You know, we're in this fractured media environment where you can watch whatever you want. So how do we attract those eyeballs? And it's generally with emotion. So Seth, how does Jordan Klepper use emotion in storytelling to make you remember his points?
Well, I think he does it in the same way a lot of the other talk show hosts do it. You know, he makes like these jokes of these real life situations to bring light and to it in a way that, you know, like Joe said, you know, it makes people say like, duh, like, you know, it shouldn't be like that, you know, whatever the situation may be. Like, for example, with Fox News, I agree with Joe. I like the satire better because, you know, it seems that these stations like CNN and Fox News, they don't want you to hear the other side either, and they want you to, you know, they only want you to hear it from, like, where they are looking at it. But I think that the satirical side, it kind of opens up for, like, everyone to look at it in a similar way.
And I think, you know, we gotta, you know, and do any of you watch any satirical news programming or Fox News program on a regular basis? Right, and that's what it's all about, that competition for eyeballs and for ears. And that's the challenge these media producers have, is they have to compete for those and they have to attract them in. And they're using framing, they're using emotion to keep trying to do that battle. So thank you all for your opinion on the issue of satirical news programming covering gun control. I think it's a very interesting conversation. We'll continue it further. And thank you all out there for watching What's Up Today.